Welcome to a demonstration of motion blur. This is a super simple, easy 10-minute project, but I would like for you to try to recreate over and over just to get comfortable with a couple of the instructions. So I have opened up the motion blur document. I've made my window a little bit smaller, moved it over so I can see it at the same time as my Photoshop window. And so I'm going to go ahead and make Photoshop active, and then I'm going to open a photo. So I'm going to go File to Open. And I'm going to navigate to a picture that I choose on my desktop. It looks like I'll choose my little 3-year-old Caroline. This is what happens when you leave your computer open for photo booth. And so I've done direction number 1. And I'm going to go ahead and fly my layers panel since I'm going to be working with that first. I'm going to duplicate a layer. So we've talked about duplicating a layer as going up to layer, down to new, and over to layer. We've talked about new layer as clicking and dragging this background layer down to the new layer icon. But another option is to do a Control or J also. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock, click and drag that lock button down to the little trash. And then I'm going to do a Command J or a Control J, depending on if you're on Mac or PC, to make a layer. Okay, and so so that was direction number 2. Direction number 3 says select the top layer and add a motion blur. And so that's under the filters that we looked at earlier this week. So I'm going to go up to Filter, down to Stylize. Excuse me, what am I thinking? Filter, Blur, and then over to Motion Blur. So I've got the top layer, Filter, Blur, and then over to Motion Blur. And I'm going to really zoom out so I can see what this looks like. Then you can change your angle and the distance of your pixels depending on what you like. I'm going to make this even more so she's really blurred. So I can barely see her, but it's not so distorted. Okay, so that I'm going to click OK. And so that was direction number 4, Filter, Blur, Motion Blur. Okay, make sure you have the preview checkbox so you can see what you want. Now I'm going to do what's called masking a top layer. This is super important, but really the next class I'm just going to expose you to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a layer mask. So I'm going to click on this top layer, and I'm going to go to the function on the bottom that says Add Layer Mask. I can also go up to Layer, down to my different mask options here, but I tend to use the shortcut menu. So I'm going to add a layer mask, and you can see that the mask simply puts a box, or if you will, linking on top of the photo. So this is the layer mask thumbnail. Now I can navigate back to the thumbnail of the image, but this is the layer mask thumbnail, making sure that I have the white box selected with my key. Now if you'll see in direction number 5, we talk about some keyboard shortcuts. Make sure your foreground and background colors, which is the foreground color is your square on top, background color is the square that's underneath, are defaulted to black and white. Now I have white on top, and so I've clicked my little reverse. I can toggle back and forth with switching my foreground and background color. So black reveals, white conceals. Black reveals, white conceals. That's important to know. So making sure that my default colors, foreground is black, okay, and white background is white. Okay, now I'm going to go to my brush panel. So I'm going to move this over. So I'm going to go to a new tool for us, and it's the brush. And it is the 7th tool down. It's also B on your keyboard or hovering over. If I click and hold anywhere there's a triangle, it will give me more options. But I'm going to go to my brush tool. And remember, if I want to bracket up to the right, that makes my brush larger. Bracket left, that makes my brush smaller. And so we're working into direction number 6, where it says click on brush. Brackets can be used to increase and decrease the size of the brush. Bracket left will decrease, bracket right will increase. Okay, so I'm going to just open her up, because what I'm going to do is when I brush over her face, do you see how I have revealed, because I'm literally painting with black, but on my layer mask, I have revealed her underneath. and everything else is blurred. And that is a very, very simple but effective, let me go back and get my layers panel so you can see, way to do a fun kind of, especially if something's in motion, to clear it up and everything else is blurred out behind. We do it a ton in our sports projects. So you can also tell that I have revealed with my black paint where I have literally painted with my black brush, but only when I'm on the layer mask, only when I have done a layer mask on top of it, essentially. Okay, I feel like this picture didn't really do it justice. So I'm going to go find a basketball picture. Basketball player in motion, images. I'm going to go ahead and go to my tools, usage rights, non-commercial reuse with modification. I'm going to go ahead. It's okay if I don't get a big size, but this is just kind of going back to week 1 that we've talked about in case I do want to print it. So what I'm going to do is, this looks like a good one. I'm going to choose this basketball picture. Go ahead and view this image. Oh, it's not going to let me. Okay, I'm going to do a right click, save image as. Basketball player on my desktop. Okay, I'm going to navigate back to Photoshop. Name of the game is remembering where you saved it. File to open. Choosing that desktop, basketball player, open. Okay, now I'm going to zoom in a little bit, which we learned. Okay, so I'm going to start working with this. I'm going to grab my layers panel. It looks like I don't see it, so I'm going to go up to window, down to layers, pull it over. First thing, click and drag that lock down to the trash can. Command or Control J to jump the layer. I'm going to work on the copy itself and put a motion blur on top of it. So filter, blur, motion blur. I'm going to decrease it. Now that's way too much from what I used Caroline last time, so I'm just going to blur it out a little bit. Click OK. I'm going to make sure my default colors are set. I can do D on my keyboard, which is on your direction sheet, which is your default color. I can toggle if I need to, but making sure my foreground color or my black square on top is black, the square in the back is white. I'm going to go to my paintbrush tool, but before I do that, I haven't done my adjustment layer yet. So I'm going to, on my top layer, go ahead and click on the box with the square cut out of it, add layer mask, making sure that the white box is selected to where I'm going to go paint. And again, my brush is way too large at this point because I'm going to only clear up the player that's shooting the ball. So I'm going to bracket left down a pretty significant amount. And then I'm just going to start painting this player. And it looks like I even may not have, I think the blur might be too much. So probably if I was working with this or using this as a project, I might go ahead and not blur these players out enough so the public eye could see. So that is your motion blur project for Module 2. Thank you.